Welcome back to Two Homers and a Realist. Here we are, midweek of the Cincinnati game, OU's first true road test, and we've got a lot to talk about. I'm Steve.
Lucas.
Connor.
Jay.
All right, guys, let's dive into it. We've got a lot of things to cover in terms of what to watch for here in this first road test for the Sooners. I'm pretty interested to see how they handle the road, a hostile environment. It's going to be everything's disruptive. You're leaving the state of Oklahoma. You are really establishing conference play, if you will. It's kind of weird to think Cincinnati is conference play, but it is for the time being. So it's an important game in a number of respects. It's important to see how OU handles what will be a pretty good defensive line, and we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Big noon kickoff.
And
some Big 12
freaking
party.
Oh, I didn't see that. What
thing.
is this?
I don't know.
I don't know. It's probably something
probably a rapper.
It's probably something that Gus Johnson MCs and starts screaming.
Who was in Tulsa last week?
Sean Kingston.
Kingston. Well, we've got a lot to talk about there. Let's cover some ground. So, what are you guys thinking? Let's dive right into the game to start with. What are you guys watching? What's to watch for?
Well, it kind of sucks that we're not going to be there. This will be our first missed game of the season. For me, I spent the last week going around seeing Pearl Jam shows. So
you were in enemy territory.
I was in Austin the last 2 nights.
You were in a scouting mission.
Seeing Pearl Jam, and I was in the arena that the Texas Longhorns play basketball in. I was really not impressed, honestly. The facility is it's I think a year old, and it was just average, I feel like.
Do you think that it will hurt their ability to win basketball games?
I hope so, and volleyball and all the sports.
Probably football, too. I mean, it translates.
I mean, I did see the stadium's right next to the basketball and the soccer and all that. Just too much orange and too many Longhorn logos around that town. But
one is too many.
I will miss not getting to watch the game from the end zone because that will skew my reaction and
so
my view.
Just as an aside, if they offered a premium package where you could watch from the end zone, you'd do it.
You wouldn't pay it.
TV
illegally
TV
stream
camera
everything anyways.
So you want the extra point cam, the field goal cam.
Yeah,
all the time.
Yep, that'd be totally fine with me. I would watch.
Now, what if
I would watch every NFL game, every college game that way?
What if it was back in that 80s, 90s version of television before we had high def and all this?
Then it would be a lot tougher because then you probably couldn't make out the jersey numbers.
I just want to know what you
field.
smoked in Austin. So
Nothing.
Okay, so this is just a sober.
I'm just on a Pearl Jam high.
Gotcha.
Well,
but other than that, like you said, true road tests. Their quarterback was the Florida transfer kid, right? Emory Jones.
Yep.
He's a dual threat kid. I'm interested to see what our Deshaun McCullough in the cheetah position looks like with his probably first start, I guess, since Harrington's out. How much Peyton Bowen gets to play with being a tougher team than Tulsa and SMU. So that'll be interesting to see. And then obviously we can talk offense too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking for here's my notes. I want to see run game strength and dependability. I'd like to see us establish a running back. I don't hold out a lot of hope that it's going to happen. We're playing a good defensive line, but I'm really getting more and more concerned about the running back position. If we've got a guy that we can go to, if we understand what the rotation's supposed to be, if we can knock the rust off these guys, and if we can just get long-term production. I'd love to see some good breakaway runs, and we did average a good yards per carry against Tulsa, but it was Tulsa. So what is that going to look like down the stretch? I'm looking for Dylan Gabriel to be steady in the pocket. I want to see him making reads, going through his progression. I'm a little concerned in that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I want to see him continue to get some deep ball success, and that'll keep the threat of the deep ball alive. Let's see if that can happen. Let's see if he can hit the guys in stride the way he needs to and really cause that to stretch the defense out. I've got some concerns there.
I mean, that helps the run game.
And it will help the run game a lot. And I want to see the defense leading the way. I want to see the OU defense continuing their dominance, continuing to impress, and really keep the game completely in hand. They have done a tremendous job up to this point of containing teams, keeping them out of the red zone, definitely out of the end zone. So I want to see them continue to do that, and we'll see if they're able to do that against the Cincinnati offense. What do you guys got?
I'll echo. I mean, some of the same points you all have already made. And we'll get into it again later. But Dylan Gabriel's momentum, I do want to see that, and it's what we talked about in our pregame clip as well. Just wanting to see him cash in on some of those plays that we saw last week. Something I noticed when I went back and rewatched the game, we got 28 points up, I think. And I feel like we saw a similar reaction from our offensive coordinator, Jeff Lebby, in terms of his play calling that just was less than stellar. After, again, I go back to it. I know I went back to it in either the midweek last week or the post game, the Oklahoma State game, where we saw this last season, saw a super open playbook the first half and then
First quarter,
and kind of closed that up. So I feel like we saw something similar last week, and I feel like that point was that drive right before half where we could not figure out a way to get in the end zone with more than enough time down in the red zone, especially within the 10-yard line. And I feel like that kind of just, I don't know, it was a weird stall. So I want to see us open it up. I want to see those successful plays down the field with the short and intermediate route that we all know Jeff Lebby loves to run, working as well. I think he balanced those really well in the first 3 to 4 drives last week. So I'd like to see that. Something kind of that Lucas said with Peyton Bowen and Harrington, I think Peyton Bowen may have earned himself a spot over a Reggie Pearson last week after some of and Reggie Pearson got hurt, but let's assume he's fully healthy and ready to go coming into this week. Pearson looked lost in a lot of those situations last week, both at the safety position and when he was at Cheetah. Looked a little bit slow, looked like he was trying to figure out where he needed to be on a couple of those plays. So I mean, we talked about it in the preseason. Is Peyton Bowen going to be starting for OU when we play Texas? And it is trending in that direction, especially with injuries and also with just overall playmaking ability. So I will be interested, as Lucas is, to see Peyton Bowen out there.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a big game for Gabriel in terms of I don't feel very confident in the run game. Cincinnati's strength is on the line of scrimmage, and their linebackers come downhill. And we haven't shown the ability to move people off the ball, and we haven't established who our 1A, 1B running back is, as you alluded to, Steve. And I think it's really going to be predicated on him connecting on down the field passes. So I'm interested to watch if particularly the interior of our offensive line can hold up, especially if at left guard we're playing true freshman Caden Green. He was a 5-star recruit, big time player, but this would be his first start on the road against NFL type defensive linemen, so that is a tough job for any player. And if we cannot establish the run, then Dylan has to be on point. We're gonna have to throw to set up the run, instead of run to set up the throw. So that's what I'm looking for, is if the interior offensive line can hold up. If they do, then I think we have not a cakewalk of a day, but I think our offense is going to move the ball efficiently and fairly easily. But I'm actually slightly worried about this game because Gabriel hasn't shown the ability to take command of a game when other facets of our offense aren't working. And I feel like they're going to stop our run game, and it's going to be relied upon for Dylan to make those plays.
I think you're right, and if I was Cincinnati coming up with a defensive plan, I think it would be aiming at making us one-dimensional and making Dylan Gabriel make the throws. Because we've got power in the run game, but they've got a lot of defensive power up front to stop that. And so if they can get back and force him to make the throws, we could be in a really tough spot. We've had our issues with Gabriel being able to make the money throws and the throws that make a difference. Maybe we'll get into that in a minute. That worries me too. I'm worried that we get into a game where we can't establish the run game, and we are backpedaling in a lot of cases. And you're in a game where maybe you're up by 3 points, 7 points, and it gets late in the game, and anything can turn at that point. That's ideal from Cincinnati's standpoint. Then their crowd stays in it the entire time. All of those things are concerns. I would try to make us one-dimensional if I were them, and try to force Dylan Gabriel to make the throws. And really, if you can force him into decision-making where he's throwing to the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage, that may give you a lot of advantage as Cincinnati looks at it, from keeping us from that down the field threat that quickly puts points on the board. If we don't have that ability to do that and we can't get yardage in chunks, we could be in a dogfight deep into this game.
And this actually kind of segues into a listener question around some of the topics that you and Jay are just now discussing. So, longtime listener, sometimes guest, Christian, has asked a question. Couple of statements in here that lead to the question, so bear with me. Biggest question on offense is the mild or lackluster rushing attack. The numbers don't look awful, but hasn't been impressed at all with the running game so far this year. No real explosive plays, as we've talked a lot about. Can't tell if the backs don't have good vision, if the line isn't opening up holes, or is it some other issue? Maybe a mixture of both. What do we think? Is he nitpicking, or do we see the same thing? And how do we fix that going into this week? So initially, Jay, you mentioned something this week after the game that I thought was interesting. You heard it on another pod around just some of the weird schemes that our offensive line is working in. A lot of it's not just direct blocking the man in front of you. It's more like cross blocks of our centers going to block, tackles, and just it's odd. I witnessed it yesterday. I made it a point to look at that as I was watching the game. There were some very weird blocking schemes, especially on run plays. So for me, we are too good in the offensive backfield not to have those explosive plays that Christian has mentioned. I think it may be a mixture of both. Like Barnes last week, to me, something I made in my game notes, Barnes looks slow and unsure of himself in some situations. I know we were making the joke during the game that he needs to change his cleats because he was slipping all over the field, but even aside from that,
he was second guessing his steps.
Yeah, I mean, he had a couple of runs where he got into the second level of the defense, but there wasn't a lot else outside of that. So I do want to see a Gavin Sawchuk maybe this week be able to knock that rust off, Steve, that you mentioned. And I want to see some simplistic blocking up front just to open up a hole so we can get into that second level.
I would suspect that the way Cincinnati runs their defense and pressures with their linebackers and stuff, if I had to guess, we're going to play whoever our best pass protecting running backs are. So I would actually...
Might be Major.
I think it's going to be Walker, Major, Barnes/Sawchuk for this game. That's just my guess.
So maybe if we open it up a little bit in the passing game, you start seeing some more skillful Barnes and Sawchuk rotations in there. But until then, we want that pass protect situation.
Do you think we'll run empty a lot?
I don't know. This is a little bit off topic, but we had discussed after the game, the tight ends have pretty much been useless.
Abysmal blocking.
And when you have the depth that we have at wide receiver, I just say, just get rid of it. Just get rid. I know you need him at times, but I would rather have Anthony, Stoops, Farouk, and take a tight end off the field so that Anderson can get on there or that Petaway can get on there. Somebody else, because they're just there. They're just bodies.
Yeah.
Right now.
And they're not bodies that are effectively giving you any more protection, and they're not giving you an option. So you might as well have a speedster who gives you an option that if I'm a defense, I'm worried about 5 hats that I've got to cover, and I'm like, one guy's going to be open.
Well, and their lack of blocking is creating a false sense of maybe security on Dylan Gabriel's part to say, I have another guy on the end of the line here who's supposed to pick up, defensive player X, and if he's not picking up that block, which, man, I watched some of that blocking from that game.
We're relying
it's
on
really bad.
Our tight ends a lot of times to have a crucial block both in the run game and in pass protection, and we just don't have that guy. So I don't know if they're trying to make our tight ends do something they can't, because if we're trying it out, because if they could, then maybe it really, really helps us out in a different area of the play. But I think we've had enough film now where they should be able to look back at it and be like, this isn't working, and let's just move away from it and let's just go to something else.
Our tight ends had a combined 1 catch against Tulsa in the second offensive drive.
And the
of
catches
game.
aren't even
No, I
the
know.
problem,
I'm just
right?
saying, but I'm just saying, like,
it's
overall,
their protection, it's their blocking.
Yeah,
it's
protection
how they're
is one thing, but
involved
even
with springing a run,
Yeah.
or giving Gabriel
And that really is
X
when
amount
you're
of
running
time.
and you're getting to that second level. That is a key part of that. Is you got the tight end blocking a linebacker, blocking a DB that's coming up, and that's the difference between a 2-yard run and a 7-8 yard, or maybe something bigger.
And that's we're not asking for a pancake. I'm asking for someone to throw a hip out there and
just
get
get in
them
their
off,
way.
get them off
Yeah.
the line,
Yeah,
right?
just
Get them off
because
the.
these running backs are good enough that if you can get them in stride to that second level, they can break an arm tackle,
Yep.
and they're gone.
I wouldn't mind seeing a 5-wide with Anthony, Farouk, Anderson, Stoops, and Petaway, because you're going to have 2 guys that are deep between Anthony and Anderson. They're going to take the safeties with them, and then you're going to have linebackers trying to cover Petaway, which is probably impossible for them, or they're going to have like a DN try to step out, which he's way too shifty and fast for that. Farouk has proven when you get the ball in his hands, he can make great cuts with the ball. And then we all know Stoops knows where the chains are. So I think those 5 guys, if they're not blitzing, obviously, and that's a big if, and if they are, you just get the ball out quick, because you're going to have 2 guys
Exactly.
with Stoops and Petaway underneath. Now, you can't run it, 25 times in the game.
And Gavin
but-
Freeman.
I mean,
Yeah.
that was my next
yeah.
point. Do we?
if
do
you want to
we-
put Freeman in there, but I mean, Stoops is your go-to chain getter guy on the,
But do you give
3rd
Petaway
and 7
do you give
type of
Petaway
deal.
the snap on the other side before Stoops or before
Freeman? I do, because
I do too.
it seems like
I think we're more willing to
either
throw it.
way,
We're more
he's
willing to throw him
his
the ball.
quickness and shiftiness is really, really evident.
Well, I would say you probably rotate them through and keep them fresh, because that's a lot of threat. And if you're able to get the ball out quickly, if you sense the blitz
Yeah.
and you're able to get the ball out quickly, that's pretty scary to have one of those guys out there with the ball in space with one man to beat.
And
because
a
there's
lot of times,
speed to take it.
I mean, they're
deep.
probably, if they see that many out there, they're probably only going to be rushing 3, and they're going to drop one of those defensive ends, and none of those guys can.
No.
I mean, there's not a defensive end that's going to cover Stoops or
Freeman
Petaway
on
the on the
Yeah.
underneath stuff. So, like I said,
I would love to see a
I'm not
5-wide
looking to
set.
see that all the
Jeff
time.
Levy will never do it.
But
Have we
but
seen a 5-wide set this year?
not off the top
I
of
don't
my
think we've
head.
had
Levy
one.
Levy won't do it. I don't think
I
Levy
mean,
will do it.
Not that I remember.
Baylor did it.
I know, but I don't think
UCF
I
did
do
it,
not
so-
think Levy will do it.
I mean, to not put a tight end in there.
But
There's,
he
So-
seems so dead set on doing that.
yeah, but he's also dead set on throwing it less than 5 yards from the line of scrimmage. And this gives you the opportunity to have 2 deep guys take the safeties away and be able to throw it underneath to a guy that's good with the ball.
I
in his
completely
hands.
agree with you. I am like 100% on that boat. I unfortunately do not think. What worries me is I don't think we, like adjustment wise, I don't know if Levy does it. I don't know if he goes, I'm sure to a level, but like even we spoke last week about how great the defensive adjustment was to this backup quarterback that we saw come in, and
The second half adjustment.
the second half adjustment that we saw. I think Levy has a game plan, and I think that is the game plan.
Yeah, but we do have a guy on staff that grew up under Leach. I mean, Seth Luttrell
Yeah.
is a Leach disciple, and it wouldn't surprise me if he brought a couple of those 5 receivers
I would love
setups
it.
in.
I would love
Oh,
it.
that'd be wonderful. I think it'd be
and
very powerful.
not that they're quote unquote saving it for Texas, but obviously we probably could have used it in SMU when we were a little bit stagnant during part of that game. But the other 2 games we haven't needed any like special offensive formation type.
Well, and
stuff
how
to
crazy
do.
is it that we're talking about the depth at the wide receiver position right now?
Right.
When we're all talking about which obviously tight end, but we're all talking about how wide receiver was one of our biggest concerns going into the season. We have seen so much talent.
I was talking.
And the opposite from the running back, which we
running
thought
back
was
we-
stacked.
Yeah.
I was
Loaded,
talking
right.
and agreeing with friends this week that what a flip it's been that running back now has become the concern and wide receiver is so settled that we're very comfortable and have so much talent and
We're wanting true freshmen in
confidence
there.
in what's going on, and they're doing great.
Yeah.
Some
So-
of that's line play to me, though.
For
I
sure.
don't think
Agreed.
the line is cohesive like we thought it would be.
I don't even know if it's just cohesive. It's just I don't know that.
They're not dudes other than Guyton.
No, because what I go back to is we played an inexperienced offensive line in our bowl game against a far superior defense than we've faced to date
And pushed
this
them around.
season.
And we pushed them
And we
around.
ran for 200 plus yards.
You know what we probably did with that amateur offensive line group? Ran basic offensive
Simplified it?
line
Right.
packages.
Run straight forward.
Yes, I'm gonna block the guy in front of me. You're
For
gonna block the
years
line in
and
front of
years,
you.
I've seen every time they did that, it had success.
Yeah.
When they tried to get complicated and they pulled a guard and they ran, it was complicated, and sometimes it works and sometimes it really
and it
doesn't.
took 6 weeks to get used to it.
Yeah, and
we
when,
do not
when
have
you just
that
line up
time.
and
We
blow
don't
them
have
up,
that luxury.
it works.
Yeah. So
So you're dancing around, Lucas, and I think all of us are, a couple of things that are sort of key questions here. One is, if what you say is true in terms of the game plan, Dylan Gabriel's got a lot on his shoulders. He's going to have to read the defense to see if there's a blitz, and he's going to have to figure out how to get the ball away to the right person. And if he is going to go deep, which was one of the things I want to see us do successfully, he's going to have to hit that receiver in stride and hit him in the right spot. And if I'm Cincinnati, I'm thinking I'm going to put, I don't know how much confidence they have in their defensive backfield, but I'm going to put my defensive backfield out there thinking I don't need over-the-top additional help as long as he's underthrowing balls. When he does complete for 15 yards, it's just 15 yards. It's not 15 yards plus 45 for a touchdown. And that's the real key. If he can hit guys in stride, you burn someone who takes that risk. If you don't, occasionally you have success, and occasionally you don't get to that. That's a third down and you don't complete it. So that's something that I'm concerned about. We ran a poll this week, got a little bit of feedback and static on it, even though it was fairly neutral. The question was, where does OU's greatest total probability of success lie? How has OU attained its total success? Is it with Jackson Arnold, Dylan Gabriel, or either one under center at the helm? And overwhelmingly, 72% of our 173, thank you very much, poll respondents said Dylan Gabriel. But meaningfully, 10% said Jackson Arnold and 18% said either one. And that tells me a lot of people are seeing what we're seeing, and that is there's not a lot of difference between the two. And when I look at what Dylan Gabriel does down the field, it really scares me. I see a guy who can't hit a guy in stride, and sometimes can't even hit a guy in a way that's not making it a pretty jump ball situation, a competitive ball that shouldn't be. And that's taking you out of your ability as an offense to stretch the field and put things in a position where if the defense fails, you win big because you win a touchdown. You don't just win 15 yards.
When we say can't, though, he has done it periodically. It's just not consistent. There were some throws we really raved about in that first game against Arkansas State where he hit Anthony
And
in
SMU.
stride. Yeah. And then even
I'm
a couple
sorry, and
throws.
Tulsa.
Yeah, Tulsa. There's a couple throws in Tulsa that were right on the money, but there were also, there were some that it's a 25-yard throw to Anthony, and if he throws it a foot further in front of him, he catches it in stride, and it's a 60-yard touchdown. But instead, he has to go down to get the ball, and he catches it for 25 yards, but he rolls on
Which
the
is
ground
great.
afterwards. Yeah, 25-yard gain's awesome, but not as awesome as a 60-yard touchdown that you only threw 25 yards.
In fact, was that the same drive that ended the half that ended in a field goal instead of a touchdown?
One I'm thinking of was going to the other end zone.
So
It was
I'm
in
thinking of
first
the one that
quarter.
came at us as we were in the end zone.
Yeah.
And it was a catch over the middle. It was a slant route that was, if I'm remembering right, it was one that was tackled there for a great gain, but on that drive we get stalled out on the 2-yard line, and that'll happen. And it doesn't happen when you hit a guy in stride and you turn that into an immediate touchdown. So I'm concerned about that. I know there's been a lot of support and love for Dylan Gabriel, and we love Dylan Gabriel. We think he's a great player, and we wish nothing but the best for him, but we've got concerns that he is hitting his peak and that his floor and ceiling are really close together here, and that Jackson Arnold's floor is right there with it, but his ceiling is much higher.
And I think this is hopefully the start of allowing our quarterbacks to use their legs. Because we thought
field.
Coming into the season that there was going to be a lot more quarterback run game because we have a competent backup, and so it wasn't so detrimental if you lost Gabriel for a quarter or a half or for the rest of the game, etc. But I think the quarterback needs to start picking up those hidden yardages with their feet, and maybe this is the game for that.
He had one couple points. He had one scramble last week to memory. He scrambles in for a touchdown. It gets called back on a hold.
Right.
I don't think he scrambled outside of that. He had a couple of scrambles where he had to flush the pocket, and actually, going back, it was 2 noticeable plays where he had to do that scrambling. Made very good decisions in the reads that he made to make the throw for a completion. One was actually on a 3rd and 13 going to the left, and he's flushed out and finds Stoops and gets a first down. I made a note of that. Very good play on the money ball. From a consistency standpoint, I go back to a couple different plays. The first one is right before Nick Anderson's first touchdown. There's LV Bunkley Shelton releases over the middle on a post, grossly overthrown ball, uncompetitive. Bunkley Shelton has his defender beat. Dylan Gabriel, if you put it up in the air where, even if it's on a line, just at the height of Bunkley Shelton's arms, it would have been a touchdown. Grossly overthrown, almost like he was throwing it away in the back of the end zone. Next play, pretty much the same route for Nick Anderson that Bunkley Shelton ran. Nick Anderson catches it over the middle on a post for a touchdown, and that play before kind of goes unnoticed. Something I noticed. And then
Well, stop you right there
Yeah.
real quick, because if you're not playing Tulsa, you don't get that second chance
Yeah.
on that.
Exactly.
They change things up.
And even on Anderson's play, the ball's a little bit behind him. He's having to reach back onto his back shoulder to make that catch. A good defender is going to go and put a hand up, and it's going to be a non-factor. So there were a couple, even a couple. Stoops' first touchdown on his little out route that he runs in the end zone, same thing, on his back shoulder, thrown behind him. If a defender is there at all, I'm swatting that away. So I agree. He made some really good throws last week against Tulsa. I got to worry about some of the throws that were completed down the line when we do face better opponents, the Texases of the world, even this weekend, right? I mean, Cincinnati's going to have better defenders than Tulsa.
As weak as the Big
So.
12 is, and we can talk about that and talk about how weak they are and how weak they look, week in and week out, we see different aspects of them, and this last week made us think the Big 12 is weaker than we thought it was before. But still, they're going to have more athletes and better coaching than what we faced in the non-conference, by and large. So you can't count on out-athleting someone.
And you have to
in those
sit back as well. We roll into town for any of these, or people coming in Norman, OU's got that target on their back.
Absolutely.
Where players play above, in my opinion, the talent that they actually obtain in a lot of cases. We've seen it in losses that we've had in the last few years to teams that we should have rolled, and they play above their expectation because of the opponent, of the Crimson and Cream on the other side of the line.
To combine the fact that it's OU coming to town, and you're new to the Big 12, and this is big time for Cincinnati. I mean, they are going to be amped and up and ready. They were probably had a little bit of a look ahead moment, and probably why they lost to Miami, Ohio. And they will be absolutely ready for us to come to town.
Well, they also, and everyone will face this or be in this position, And as we get better, let's assume we continue to win. You're going to have, as an opponent of OU, less to lose, more to gain every time. As an athlete and as a team, you've got every reason to go for the gusto, because heads you win tells you were supposed to lose. So it's not a big deal. So we're going to get not only their best, but we're also going to get them stretching and doing things we wouldn't normally see and we wouldn't actually do out of individual play as well as some play calling. So we've got to be prepared for that and got to overcome it, and that's difficult. That's what that, to me, having a target on your back, that's everything about the fact that you have a completely different risk-return situation than your opponent faces. They face a totally different situation. And if they exploit it, they can really make it difficult for
a
you.
lot of these guys. I mean, you go and beat OU, that coach is solidifying a job potentially
absolutely.
for X amount of time. So I mean, and
That's a
that's dramatic, but
statement
it's
win.
I think it's
Matt
true.
Campbell got 3 extra years out of beating us in Norman.
Yeah,
So
Probably.
Yeah.
are you guys concerned about anything? I mean, it's so ironic how much this podcast and the flavor has shifted because of some of the successes we've had on one side and some of the shortfalls we've had on the other. Anything defensively outside of the Bowen situation that you guys are looking for on defense, or that you're maybe even worried about?
The dual threat quarterback always worries us. We've seen it for 2 decades.
Yeah, it's
how
tough.
much we've struggled with it, and I don't
Well,
know. If
everyone's
We
struggling.
I don't know if it's more than other teams.
We
but
struggled with it
feels-
last week.
It feels like it.
That's right.
Yeah, and that guy barely even
And
threw
he
the
didn't
ball.
run.
Yeah,
he just ran out of the. He just flushed the pocket and
Yeah.
was making plays outside the pocket.
Yeah, the dual threat quarterback, and this kid, I mean, he started at Florida as a freshman, I think, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So he was probably a 4-star, 5-star type kid, and now he's playing at Cincinnati. He probably went there for Fickles. This is his second season there that he started.
Did he come in against us when we played them in the Cotton Bowl?
In the ball game?
I think he did. I think he. I think.
Oh, I'm sure they did,
I
because
think
they started with
I
two
think Trask came out of
interceptions.
that.
Did Trask
I think
come
Trask
out?
came out of that
When we
game. And I
started
think they
blowing
put
them out.
Emory Jones.
That's
Yeah,
a good thing to
I
research.
think so too. So I'm always worried about that. We've seen good defensive pressure, but we haven't gotten home much. I'm very interested to see if PJ gets to play more on the end, because he's a freak athlete. We saw that sack he had last week was just him and the quarterback, and he
got there.
didn't think twice. He just buried.
He just
him.
went.
So if we can see a couple of those, and them getting a 3rd and 18 situations after maybe running into the line on first down, it's 2nd and 9, and then you get a 6 or 7 yard sack, and you're looking at 3rd and 15.
I want to see those active hands.
I like to
again.
see some of that,
Had
especially.
a lot of active hands.
I think we come away with this game with 2 to 3 more turnovers.
I would like to
honestly.
see that, and really, if they're turnovers like in the Tulsa game, which are forced turnovers, I mean, those were as forced interceptions as you can get. Those weren't gifts. Like, the Gabriel interception was a gift. There weren't gifts. We earned those. I would like to see more of that. I would like to see us be able to effectively blitz and be pressure and put pressure when we want to have it. That's something that's been hit and miss over the prior years, where you're in a position you want to blitz and you want to have pressure. You go and try to do it, and it's not successful. I want to see us be able to do that and be that disruptor that really dictates the situation at hand.
So in the Cotton Bowl, OU Florida, 55-20 OU. Emory Jones did come in. He went 8 for 16 for 86 yards passing, 5.4 yard average, but he was also Florida's leading rusher with 60 yards, which isn't a lot, but it was
But
10,
something.
10 carries for 60 yards. So he averaged 6 yards a carry when we did face him last time.
And if he does that from quarter one against us
Yep.
on Saturday, that could be trouble. That certainly could be trouble. So that's something they've got to be looking out for. You know that we've been playing lesser opponents, and so this becomes a bigger test both offensively and defensively. Can the defense really pin their ears back, do what they need to do, get off the field when they need to get off the field? That's why I say defense leading the way. I want to see the defense putting us in a position where even if the offense isn't pristine, that the offense still has an ability. We're not depending on a score. we're getting scores when we want to, but the defense is putting us in a great position to win, which hasn't been the case last year. Coming into this year, we have been in a position where the defense has been now finally keeping us in games, and really in the Florida State game kept us in that game. In the Oklahoma State game, kept us in that game. So the last few games of the last year
Won us that game.
Plus this year, they're winning us games. If we can continue that, that's wonderful. But they've got to keep it up. Absolutely. Big concern there for sure. So speaking of defense and the future, we got a new recruit, I think. What was that new recruit that we got? Defensive lineman.
Danny Okoye.
That's correct. Danny Okoye,
Okoye,
4-star.
Sorry.
number 1 player in the state of Oklahoma. He's plays for the NOAA Homeschool League. So based off just of that, I would assume he's extremely athletic, obviously, but raw, right? Because I don't know the level of coaching that comes from the homeschooling division of football. But he's 6'5", 250. Good-looking athlete already, just right off the huff. Interesting, it was down to us, Texas, and Tennessee. Also had offers from Alabama and LSU.
That's strong.
Some sites have him as high as low 60s overall player in the country. No worse than a top 200 player in the country. So
That's great.
pretty exciting stuff.
There's two things I love about that. One is it's an Oklahoma kid we're getting, and I think this staff is getting guys they want to get, not guys they need to get, or not guys they have to get, or they're not beggars. So when they're going after an Oklahoma kid, I feel like anyone, they're going after someone they really want, and to get that kid, that really speaks a lot. The fact that he's got those other offers, that speaks highly of who he is, that those are schools that you have to respect their process, and that they're not going to just take a flyer on anybody. They're going after quality recruits. What was interesting was some of the context that he brought in terms of how the story changed with this staff versus his first initial visit to Norman, and how Riley and company weren't really exciting to him. What did he say about that?
Yeah, he said he was asked, why did he pick OU? And he said, I just really vibed with the staff and can really buy into what the program is offering. Before, when I visited OU under Lincoln Riley, the energy wasn't the same as it is under Brent Venables. I see how genuine and realistic they are at OU. One of the big selling points of the OU program is football isn't forever, so they want to prepare you for more than just football. He also went on to say, back in 2020, when I went on my visit to OU, I didn't see Lincoln Riley one time.
Wow.
But when I went a few weeks ago, Brent Venables was there. He was present. He was energetic. He was passionate. He was bouncing off the walls. The difference in the energy between old OU and new OU stuck out like a nail in a wall.
Well,
That's incredible.
He said he didn't see Lincoln Riley because all he cared about was the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
So he spent all his times with the quarterbacks and the skill position offensive players, and never bothered caring about the defensive side. Of the ball.
That's we all kind of gloss over it, and some people have made a more to do about it than what. But that is a fairly damning.
It's very damning.
Thing to say,
Oh,
because
yeah.
he was essentially on our radar. We were not on his radar. He had already written us off.
Yeah.
And the staff stayed on him, stayed persistent. But it just speaks volumes to Lincoln and his staff not being able to recognize the potential of this. What was he, a 10th grader at that time?
Yeah.
Or so?
No,
Right?
he'd have been like a 8th grader.
Ninth
coming in
grader, 10th
freshman-
grader at the
freshman
time.
year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can give him a little bit of a pass for that because you don't know how players are going to turn out.
But you don't burn a bridge.
Yeah.
And it sounds like they burned a bridge, and it's something that they weren't recognizing. They're burning bridges. I would like to think, and we would have to dig deep to understand this, but I'd like to think that this staff today is not burning those bridges, that it's reaching out to kids and keeping connections alive to see what develops on both sides of the ball. Even if you've got a head coach that's always a head coach is going to come from one or the other. There's no coach that did both. There's always an offensive origin or a defensive origin. But as a head coach, You have to think, I've got to be complete on both sides of the ball, and they want to see me. I'm the face of the program. They want to know, and they want FaceTime with the guy who is the man. And you've got to spread your time out and understand that even though you may have your home base of, for Brent it's defense, for Lincoln it's offense, you've got to spread it out and give some equal time to the other side of the ball so that you keep those relationships healthy, and so that when a guy does develop, you are able to close the deal on him. And
But
that,
just to think
that's amazing.
where we're at right now versus where we would have been had Lincoln stayed, the number one player in the state of Oklahoma
wouldn't
wouldn't even have thought about coming
No.
here.
He'd have been going to Texas.
Texas or Tennessee.
Yeah, wouldn't have just not come. Would have gone to your rival
Yeah.
and played you.
Or even just
Or a new conference foe.
or new conference foe.
Or a new conference foe, yeah.
Someone who you're going to
In
be
all
playing
cases.
against regardless.
Yeah, I mean, it's bad enough to lose a guy
At
to Oregon.
At an elite position, right?
Yeah.
We need
A
these type of
needed
guys
position.
to go
Yeah.
into the SEC.
Where you need a lot of that depth.
And we're starting to
Absolutely.
stack them up on the D-line.
We are stacking
We
them
are
up.
stacking them up, and the priorities look so much better under this staff. So this is just one of many examples of us understanding the full game and understanding what it takes to survive and to thrive. I was talking to some fans of another school earlier today, and it was apparent to them, and they kind of understand their position in the world, that they aren't getting those guys, and it's very frustrating. And I was thinking, wow, that's the kind of situation where you may have conference success, but it never goes past that. And if you're happy with competing for your conference title and having no chance of anything in the postseason, then so be it. But that's not the aspiration of OU. OU's goal is to compete nationally for the entire championship, to get there to the national championship.
And for those that listen that maybe don't follow recruiting as close as we do, or they just wait for the players to show up, there is a reason to get excited because with the addition of Okoye, who is a 4-star defensive end, you've got 5-star defensive tackle David Stone, you've got 4-star Jaden Jackson, his teammate, at defensive tackle, 4-star. You've got Nigel Smith, who is a top 100 player, 4-star defensive end. You've got Wyatt Gilmore, who is a 4-star. I want to say he's out of Minnesota, which is interesting because we targeted him early, and I'm all on board with this staff targeting players. If they
Yes.
want them, great. And often forgotten guy is a JUCO player, Danny Saali, who is another 4-star player. So, I mean, we've got 5 elite blue chip style defensive linemen coming in for this class that you're going to pair up with the
PJ.
Adebores and the
yeah,
Terry's and the
right.
to me, it goes beyond just the stars, which are obviously important, but I have so much more credence in these guys because I believe this staff comes at it with intelligence and a deliberate plan. It's not just let's go get a star as if you're winning the recruiting battle and then it's over. You're getting a guy who you can identify works in your system. And I know where I'm going to use that player. I know how I'm going to get that player and have them on the field effectively doing a good job for me in games, winning games. Not just, wow, well, look, we got a 5-star. Look, we got a 4-star, which seemed to be the style of the old regime where they were just checking a box to say, look, we got good recruits. They should just produce. And
It's
we
kind of
know
like
it's
how we
more
took
than that.
it's kind of like how we took R.J. Henderson at wide receiver and told Garrett Wilson, "Oh, sorry, we got no
Right.
room for you."
Right.
And then R.J. decommits.
And you're
Garrett
high and
Wilson
dry.
goes to Ohio State. Now Garrett Wilson's tearing up the NFL.
Yeah, how's he
and
doing?
R.J. Henderson is a nobody.
But
right?
and that goes back to Steve's point earlier, exactly. And go back to Kamar Wheaton, where relationship-wise, not only establishing it to get the commitment itself, but you better bet that Todd Bates or even Venables himself or whomever is staying in constant contact with Okoye up until National Signing Day. It's not going to be this thing where crap, or unless unless OU starts losing or something happens, it's not going to be a thing where we lose touch with someone because, we got him in the bag, on to the next. Got him in the bag, on to the next type of thing, where I think that age, at least right now for OU, especially with what we hear about we're doing with NIL and what we're doing for players as well.
Soul program.
The Soul Mission, exactly, where, I don't think that statement speaks for itself, right? There's not a lot else you have to say. You could pick it out like a nail on the wall. It is night and day difference from the previous regime. And that right now is what you're going to have to do to maintain that longevity and that success down the line, especially moving to the SEC.
When you're trying to bring these kids in this season, you can't really show them tape of last year and say, this is what we're trying to do, because we really didn't have the dudes up front that we wanted to.
Some on the future.
But now as you're going along this season, trying to bring in these 5-star and high 4-star kids that are the ultimate of what you're looking for body shape wise and all that, you'll be able to show them as this season goes along, hopefully, that look at what these young kids are doing now. This is going to be you.
Yes.
And, where previously it wasn't like that.
Well, and also look at what we're doing with, not that these aren't good players, but we've got older players in the system right now that are from other teams and transfers in. And, are they getting better? Are they improved from where they were once before? Has our staff upped what they're doing? And, you tell these kids, not just what they want to hear, but you're a better talent than what we have right now. And look what we're doing now. It's not as good as we want it to be, but that's why we're coming for you.
Well, that's where you can give a positive to even the offensive side of the ball. Look at Andrell Anthony.
Yes.
I mean, the kid had, I think Venables came out with the stat yesterday, is maybe wrong, but I believe 16 catches over 2 seasons at Michigan, and he's already about to match that in 3 going on 4 games at OU.
And it's
not in that, he's a premier guy for us.
And as good as our offense has been, it's not like you're surrounded with All-American talent and you've got the leading Heisman candidate at quarterback and everything, where you could say, well, anyone could succeed in that system. It's not a system thing. It's more of, we can develop your talent and we can get you to the next level, and we can see where you fit into the mix.
We have a vision for you.
We have a vision for you. And I think that speaks volumes. I think that's really important.
And I will give Lebby credit for that. Lebby, I think, identifies that. I think he does have a vision for, and again, that's why I'm so pro Jackson Arnold, because I do think Lebby has this template that he works within, and I think Jackson Arnold checks the boxes of that template
He does all
to a
of
T.
it. Yeah, I really think so,
I'm
too.
really excited for that transition once it comes. And I think Dylan,
truth serum, you'd wonder, Arnold's the guy, he wants running the show.
Yeah.
Ultimately, to run what Lebby wants to run.
Right.
But, we are where we're at.
So it's going to be interesting to see if and when and how the season progresses with Dylan, if it's good enough, and good enough could be you win it all. Good enough could be you just win a Big 12 title. Good enough could be you just compete for a Big 12 title.
Lebby's going to have to make some adjustments.
He's going to have to think about that. He's going to have to think about, and that's going to be a real test of Lebby. And I would like to think, in my homer optimistic mind, this is the last season to have to worry about that. Where going forward, you always are in the luxury of, barring an injury, you are always putting the guy forward that you know is going to do everything you want out of an offense and put you in a position to win, and you don't have to think through, well, this guy isn't actually that good at this position, he's got some weaknesses here, we've got to reconfigure our scheme. You've got a guy who can execute top to bottom what you want to do, and you can dictate the field when you're on offense.
Because you don't want to be in a position like an Alabama is in, where you are having to retrofit a transfer quarterback into a system that you want to run.
Yeah.
And we saw it. He did an amazing thing for us. Hindsight's 20/20 for me. Looking back, he was amazing. But it's the same thing with a Jalen Hurts post Kyler, post Baker.
Yeah.
Where Lincoln Riley had to go and fit this guy into the system, and not only that, had to rebuild the system around him to make sure that what he had from a skill set standpoint worked to let us win. And you saw a lot of Riley shortfalls in that year, in my opinion. He wasn't used to that, and I'd much rather have a guy who comes up who Lebby's been able to pinpoint. This is the guy that's going to do what we need him to do to get the maximum amount of success.
And have that confidence to know, here's what I want to do, and now I can start to work on the second and third level details rather than worry about the very first level detail, and that is getting a quarterback to just execute the play you want executed and read the progression that you want read.
That is a reason I voted for Jackson Arnold in that poll that we ran this week.
I voted for Jackson Arnold as well, and it's nothing against Dylan as much as it's for Jackson Arnold. And again, I'll be tickled pink if Dylan Gabriel can go the distance and be absolutely phenomenal for us.
Get us to a playoff.
Get us to a playoff and everything. What I fear is we'll be in a position where the defense is having to bail us out of a lot of situations if Dylan Gabriel is at the helm all the way through. What I would like to see and would have liked to have seen against Tulsa is Jackson Arnold get in the game earlier and just run the offense. When we're up 21 or even 14-0, give him a series and see what he can do in that point.
Well, after that pick six that Stutzman had, that puts us up 21-0, perfect opportunity. We saw it on defense. We started throwing freshmen out there, Vickers, and some others. That early in the game, you're going to do it on that side of the ball. Let Jackson Arnold get in there and run the system.
You won't have a safer time to do that, probably, until some game deep into the season where it won't matter as much. So
you might see it. You might see it in Iowa State.
Maybe
you might,
if things work out just right.
If they do, and that was another game note I had after last night. I think the Jackson Arnold package holds a value within this offense. You don't need to gimmick him like we saw last week consistently. I'm all for some mixes and some throwing some different looks out there. But Steve, to your point, and I completely agree with it, he is showing that one throw that he had shows me that he is a guy and you can put him in your offense and he can run it.
Just run it normal.
Let him run it. Let him run the offense.
You know, it's so strange to be in a position where you've got a guy that young who can come in and do what he does with such absolute aplomb and confidence. Just he just executed it like a junior.
He executed like he's done it 1,000 times.
And somebody missed a block, and he had a defender right in his face that laid a lick on him, and it was still on the money.
He didn't care. Very impressive. We're totally sold on his ability, and I think he is a lock for how good he can be going forward. And that really gets us to the locks of the week.
The realest deal, locks of the week.
So who wants to start us out and run through their locks of the week? Let's talk a little bit about where we've gotten to at this point. Last week was a great week for me. Not so great for everyone else. Actually, Connor had I'm going to give him a good week too. I was 3-0. Connor was 2-1. Lucas and Jay pulling up the rear at 1-2. And that makes us, as a group, 25 and 23, 52%. Three of us are at 6 and 6. Lucas, you're at 7 and 5. So you're really
dominating.
Yeah, sure, dominating is the word there. But I'm coming alive at 3-0, and I'm going to start us out because I'm going to follow 3-0 with, they're locks of the week for a reason. I've got Temple getting 24.5 against Miami, Florida.
I like that pick. I almost locked it.
There is no chance Miami of Florida can cover 24.5. So I got the Temple Owls. I've got Memphis getting 6.5 to Mizzou. That's not going to work out for Mizzou. Memphis is going to cover that. They might win the game outright. And then I'm going to switch it up and take a favorite. I've got Michigan giving 24.5 against Rutgers. Rutgers is not going to be able to stay on the same field with Big Blue. They're going to cover 24.5. Who wants to go next?
I can go. I've got Bama minus 6.5 against Ole Miss. I think they get their crap together and start bullying teams around again and not just worry about which quarterback they're playing and get back to basics and just start running the ball. I've got UCF getting 6.5 against K-State. We always talk about how much we like Kleiman But
And we do.
I think UCF has got a heck of an offense this year, and I don't think K-State has much of an offense personally.
I like
And
that
they can
pick.
still win the game and not cover.
Yeah, I mean they could lose by a field goal and still win.
What was that? What was the
6.5.
6.5?
Although it has been moving, but the line that we have is from,
UCF's putting up some
from
points.
Monday is 6.5, and then I've got North Carolina minus 7.5 against Pitt.
It's
No-
interesting.
no
I'm on the
analysis
opposite
there.
side on 5 of the 6 of those picks right there, which means you guys are in trouble. So
Go ahead, Jeff.
Well,
that
what do
what
you
that-
got
is that
there,
what that
big
means?
boy?
yeah, that's what that means.
Oh, okay.
That's pretty official. You can mark that down. This could be too much emotion put into this pick right here. I'm taking Oregon minus 20.5 against the Fighting Deion Sanders Colorado team.
You don't believe?
Hey, it's Coach
I
Prime.
do not believe. I think Oregon is going to make an absolute statement out of Colorado. Colorado's defense is trash. The hype is trash. The exposure is trash.
Their best players out.
And their best
ESPN is
players out.
trash.
To a dirty hit.
Their first true big-time road game. I'll give it up to Shedeur Sanders. He's been much better than I thought he was going to be. He's very good with the
Is
ball.
he your number one Sanders kid?
He is on my list of kids. He's number one.
It's not. It's not the son that does marketing for Dion. It's not him?
Correct.
Okay. I want to make sure.
Now, I felt good about this one in general, but I'm trying a new technique here. I like ranked home underdogs. And so I'm going to take Washington State plus 2.5 against Oregon State.
And you like Oregon State otherwise.
I do like Oregon State otherwise, but Washington State I think is a little bit under the radar team. And at home, it's a fairly tough place to play. Oregon State hasn't just been running through people. I like the home team getting the points there. And I'm going to do it again with Notre Dame, home ranked team, getting 3.5 against an Ohio State team that has just not been impressive to me.
Sam Hartman really has a chance to solidify
He
himself.
does. This will be this single game right here has a chance to change the trajectory of the playoffs.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I do think Notre Dame wins this game straight up, and we all know how the media and the polls all treat Notre Dame. They will jump to no worse than number 3 at worst.
Oh, absolutely.
That's
and
in,
then Ohio
that's in South
State,
Bend.
Yes.
And Ohio State is really on the outside looking
Yeah.
in. Well, where they control their own destiny probably in that situation, but now it's really incumbent. They got to win out at that point, and the pressure's on. I like that pick as well because Ohio State started so slow in so many of their games this year. I think that there's a real chance for Notre Dame.
Yeah, the
to
quarterback
surprise
experience
Going to South
heavily
Bend.
favored Notre Dame
Yep.
in that game. And I don't like Notre Dame. I don't like Ohio State either, but that's what I'm going
But
with.
you got to pick it.
You got to pick it.
A couple of overlaps here. Well, no, one overlap. I've got South Carolina at home giving 5.5 to Mississippi State. I know that South Carolina comes off a disappointing loss at against Georgia. I do think Rattler will outplay that Mississippi State team after getting curb stomped by LSU last week. I've got North Carolina giving 7.5 against Pittsburgh. May is a great quarterback. I think he'll not only be in New York, I think he'll push for that Heisman. I think he wins that one by more than a touchdown. And then I've got Texas Tech giving 5.5 against a West Virginia team that we don't know a lot about. They beat Pittsburgh in the backyard brawl last weekend. I don't think Pittsburgh's a very good team. West Virginia didn't put up a lot of points in that game. And I think Texas Tech does have something positive going on down there in Lubbock. I think they cover the 5.5 there.
Good picks, very interesting. It will be interesting to see if we can continue what has been building on in terms of a winning streak for us as a group. I think we've turned a corner, and you really need to pay attention to these locks of the week. The other thing you need to pay attention to is our score predictions for the OU game. Let's turn to the OU Cincinnati game. Talk about what we think, keeping in mind the spread right now is 14.5. OU favorite, obviously. I am going to. I've got my score. Everybody, Jay, do you have your score?
I do. I'll
Okay.
text it to you just so.
Okay,
Just
I
so
trust
you. Know
you.
I'm
I
not,
trust you.
All
But
right,
I'm gonna
just make him go first.
But I'm gonna say I'm gonna go first because I think that OU, and I hope I'm wrong, is not gonna cover. I think OU 35, Cincinnati 21. So narrowly not covering. Just really concerned about going on the road and everything that entails. But I've got us winning 35-21. Jay, what do you got?
Sort of the same sentiments. I'm going 31-20. I think we will have a little bit of the SMU type game where, unfortunately, I think the running game's going to struggle. It's going to be all on Dylan's shoulders. I do think the defense steps up and plays maybe even better than what we've seen, which doesn't necessarily reflect the 20 points allowed by Cincinnati, but I do think they'll move the ball. They had almost 600 yards of offense last week. They just didn't capitalize in the red zone on 4 or 5 opportunities. And as Lucas mentioned earlier, we do struggle with dual threat quarterbacks. So I think they'll catch us on a couple of things.
All right. Connor, what do you got?
Similar, 38-21. I do have us covering 21 points to Cincinnati for the same exact reason Jay said and Lucas alluded to earlier. New look for the defense, and I think it's going to take us a second to get our feet under us. I don't necessarily think it's comfortable going up there. I think it may be we put the game away late. Had someone text me and say this is a game that we lose more times than not last year.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think I completely agree with that.
We felt like this after Nebraska, right?
Right.
I think we all felt pretty good going into Kansas State last year.
Yeah, so I do have us covering. I think the offense, I think we are scratching our head a couple times just based on what we see on the field, but I think that's just because we haven't seen anything different. But overall, good game, good conference opener for us, good conference opening win for us, according to my prediction.
I've got OU 41-21.
Covering.
Cincinnati. I got us covering. I think that's 2 field goals and a defensive touchdown. So I really like the way we looked against Tulsa with the turnovers. We've had turnovers every game so far, and we're flying around to the ball, we're doing a better job of getting in lanes. Even when we flushed the quarterback out, it seems like Stutzman had the tipped interception. The defensive backs have just done a good job of staying with their guy, and I think we'll have a couple turnovers this game and maybe a pick six or a scoop and score.
I'd love to see Bowman get in the action this week. Jay, I think you sent the PFF grades. He was one of the lowest, if not the lowest, PFF grade, and I think that was more just he didn't have an opportunity to make an impact last week. So we have 21 for Cincinnati for Steve, right?
Yep. 21, 20.
So
Wow.
we all expect similar defensive performances, it sounds like.
And then
Yeah.
a lot of it's because of the dual threat. I think
Yeah.
it poses just enough problem that they'll get probably another touchdown.
And
than
they're
I would have want.
Cincinnati's at home, right? I mean, there is something to be said for that.
So if I were to think about it in a broader sense, it would surprise me and disappoint me if OU loses this game. It would not surprise me if OU blows them out. It would not surprise me if the defense is able to hold them to well under 21 points. It would not surprise me. It would delight me if offensively we continue to take it to the next level. And every level is a little bit shorter in terms of your climb. But if we can get to a next level from where we've been, which has been very good on balance on offense, that would be great. I do have my worries that we can't do that we stagnate a little bit, that it's a little SMU game-like in terms of our production. But I'll be delighted if I'm wrong in that front, and not completely surprised. I could see us actually having a lot of success and being able to execute in a way that is extremely effective, and maybe these scores look really low after all is said and done. But these are competitive scores. Really, I think we'd look at it if you said going into every game, if we can hold opponents to 21 points in today's football, we should be competitive. If we can score in the high 30s, we should win the football game. So in both respects, we're looking at it from the standpoint of we expect OU to be successful. We just, I think, are being fairly realistic about what we think our goal or our outlook should be at this point, with a lot of unknowns. It's up to OU to prove us wrong.
Yeah, I think, if we come out of this game and are actually able to be productive in the run game, and we do end up with something closer to like Lucas's score, I think we can kind of turn the page and be pretty optimistic moving forward, because this is possibly the best defensive linebackers grouped together that we're going to face all season. I guess you can say the reverse. If the run game is stagnant and we have a hard time moving the ball, there's going to be several games this year where it's going to be pretty iffy.
It could, that's a great point. And Texas obviously has a really highly rated defense, so that continues to look like a really challenging game in so many respects. And then it's always a chance for one of these other teams to develop as time goes on and you get worn down. If you can't effectively move the football, then 8-9 games into the season, a team that shouldn't give you trouble gives you trouble. So it's kind of a pivotal game going into conference play. I think that's pretty interesting that it lines out that way. If we can get past this opponent and look good doing it, Iowa State doesn't look as challenging. And then obviously, right there, we're facing Texas, by far our toughest opponent I'm going to say on paper, but in reality, or however you want to frame it, our toughest opponent for sure. And that's really going to be the tale of what our expectations are throughout the rest of the season. These next 3 games will tell you how much I'm going to be on the homer train or not at the end of it. If we can win all 3 of these games, looking ahead here, man, I'm going to be very optimistic about where we're going to be. I'm going to revise my prediction for what OU's season's going to be from 11-1 to something more positive. If we can't, if we struggle against Cincinnati, I may be revising down right after this game. So that'll be a telling one. Even if we win, but it looks difficult, I may be revising downwards. So to me, this is pretty pivotal. I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I want to avoid, it'd be interesting to go back and see. I think there were some gross overestimations last year going into the Kansas State game, where, again, we were on this high of the new coach plus the 3-0 start. The storyline of this week in local media is what is different this year at 3-0 than last year, and how can we get this team over the hump? It does feel like this barrier in front of us to say this is that opportunity for us to go and show that we can instill some confidence not only within the fan base but definitely within the team and within the coaches to put us over that edge. And Steve, I'm in the same boat as you. I'm looking at these 3 games as this is the definition that I need to be able to understand whether that current 11-1 is a realistic expectation, which I think it is, and I think we've shown. But this will be that affirmation that I'm looking for.
Can we live up to it?
Yeah. So
in the quarterback run game, which came to our detriment last year, and it was Kansas State. The final nail in the coffin last year was that long run on third down. It was like 3rd and 25, and we're in man coverage. No one's paying attention, and he scrambles for like 30 yards to ice the game.
That's right. That's a great point, and
makes me want to throw up.
It was interesting. You think about last year, and it was after the Nebraska game that we started to see defensively, especially the coaches try to implement the system they wanted to implement, and that's when the wheels came off, and that's where we couldn't get to the next level, and it kind of took a step backwards. So if we can keep at the level, we're already beyond where we were last year defensively by leaps and bounds. If we can continue that and get to an even higher level, and if offense can continue to get their progress that they've made, it's looking pretty positive for us.
We have
We'll
one.
see.
We have time for a quick listener question.
Yeah,
One
let's
more?
do
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
Yeah. So Jake, also longtime listener. So if these other redshirt freshmen or freshmen keep playing as well as they have, for example, Kip Lewis, even Kobe McKenzie to an extent, in this example, let's use Kip Lewis. Kip Lewis keeps playing the level of football that he's playing, seemingly better than Jaren Kanak. Is there another spot in this defense for Jaren Kanak to get on the field?
I don't know. And actually, I think the way Kip Lewis plays, if the coaches are like, we have to get this guy on the field, I actually think he switches spots with Stutz. And to me, it's a big gamble. You must really feel like Kip is that good, because you can't have his body weight manning the middle of the field. I'm not saying you can't, it's just not
It's tough.
common,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that would be a huge shift, in my opinion, for the defensive coaches to make that decision, because you're moving Stutz from what he does right now so well to, not that he couldn't do it as well switching positions, but is it
So you look
robbing
at-
Peter to pay Paul
Right. And
maneuver?
That's a Will versus a Mike
Yeah.
situation. And so do you think Kanak is on the field, though, in that switch, or that's just a pure switch?
No, I'm just saying if you would just take Kanak off the field, but if you took
Okay.
Kanak off the field
And-
to put Kip as a starter, let's say,
Right.
I think you'd have to switch the two linebackers.
Yeah.
Do we
Well-
agree that Kip Lewis has played better than Kanak when he's been in there?
I think he has.
Statistically-
Seems to me. I mean,
It seems
I
like he
feel like
gets the
he's-
ball quicker than
I feel like
Kanak.
he's close to like 50% of the time he's on the field, he makes the tackle.
I guess if
He's been on
You're
the
in-
field for like 30 plays.
Yeah.
He's got 15 tackles.
Yeah, if you're in maybe a certain set, maybe it's almost like a nickel back, but it's not a nickel back that Kanak comes in as sort of a run support disruptor, almost like a Dan Cody sort of, where he's doing something very different. Back when we used to line Dan Cody up in some weird positions.
Is he athletic enough to play cheetah?
I don't think he's athletic enough to be cheetah, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't think he's got the speed and the foot quickness, really. But I could see him being in a position where if you face a quarterback that you think, if we put pressure on this guy, he won't know what to do, then you put him in there and it's a weird blitz package. So it's almost like a 4 linebacker set or something.
Which we ran last week, actually.
Yeah.
I wish I would have went back and looked at that, because there was a time where we had, I believe it was Kip Lewis, Stutzman, Kanak standing up on the edge, all on the field at the same time. Or it was some sort of 3 linebacker set, or three
That'd
or
be interesting to
4.
see, because that's what I envision.
I don't
Of a
think
role
Kanak
for him.
has played poorly.
No.
No.
It's more or
I
less.
think he's just
is
been out of
Kip-
position once in a while.
I think it's more about is
Kip's
Kip
is
just a
just
playmaker?
better.
It's just
Yeah,
better.
just better. Yeah.
That's what we talked about with the practice and with the lights on.
And,
Yeah.
and Kip Lewis does find the ball.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
I mean, he is
It could be.
he is everything we wanted David Agwebu to be last year.
It could be team dependent. It could be.
That's true.
Do they play a bunch of like 2 tight end sets? Do they have a power running back or a speed back, or what it is that they do?
I think there'll be some strong rotation at that position. I do think Kip Lewis is at the top of that rotation outside of the other linebackers for sure. And I think, Jay, to your point in the post game, this is where we are going to start seeing the solidification of who Brent Venables thinks his guys are on that side of the ball. The 11 guys that he runs out there initially on Saturday, I think will give us a pretty strong indication of what Venables sees in this defense moving forward and into conference play.
I love that thought process, though. I love the option the optionality of having a lot of talent that you can put out there. And I love the idea that you could run different packages that are opponent dependent, that disrupt in a different way, that you might not even see that in the next game. You say, why aren't we running that? It was so successful. Well, the truth is, this is a completely different team, and this quarterback in particular just doesn't have that weakness. But the weakness or the style of play that they
This is where our
are
skill set
running,
lines
this
up-
is where we can
lines
run
up.
something totally different, and we get guys
we have to
in there.
we have to reprogram our minds to the fact that the 11 we put out there aren't the only 11 that can play for us.
Right.
Which
Well-
is what we've been used to
Yeah.
for
We've
a
been
decade,
used to
right?
9 of 11 who
Exactly.
could play.
So the fact that this might be the perfect game for McCullough, right? Where he can come up off the edge if they run a bunch of 2 tight end sets, and he's not having to cover slot receivers all the time, vice versa. And then, as you alluded to, next week, it won't happen against Iowa State, but maybe McCullough's not on the field as much. You're like, why isn't he out there? It's because, well, we've got Bowen at the Cheetah this week, and so
Because
forth.
of
And same
X,
with
Y, and
Pearson,
Z.
right?
Yeah.
As much as Pearson struggled in coverage, he does come downhill and he will thump you.
Right. And so if you're playing
he might
Texas,
actually play a lot
if
tomorrow.
you're playing Texas with Worthy and all of those talents, you may have a different.
You're probably not going to have a
You're
Pearson.
not have a Pearson in
No.
there, but you go to a team that's much more run dependent, and that completely changes, and you dominate the field with that. I love that idea. And
Well, and it goes.
I love being.
Yeah,
in that
it goes
position.
back. Yeah, it's such a great problem to be cliche, and I think you can go back to what the SMU offensive coordinator said after their game with us is basically Brent Venables and Ted Roof threw the kitchen at him. They were mixing up looks every single drive. Every time that SMU thought they had a read on what we were doing defensively, we were changing the look, and. I again, you guys put it perfectly. To be able to change looks based on what other teams' skills are is a luxury in this league and in college football holistically. And to be able to even be talking about potentially having that is
In only 18
I can't
months,
imagine. It's
you know?
crazy.
It's
crazy.
incredible.
Yeah.
So
It's incredible.
It's exciting.
Well, we'll be back for great listener question. We'll be back for the analysis of how it actually plays out on the field. OU facing Cincinnati. We'll have the post-game analysis up late on Saturday. Looking forward to OU's first true road test. Until then, Boomer.
Sooner.